Hey, welcome back. In this biology lesson, we are going to begin with energy and life. So in the next these are chapters that I'm covering. If you're watching the video, in the next about 4 videos that we will do, we'll be focusing on the chemical processes that go on in the chloroplast and the mitochondria. So in other words, we're covering photosynthesis first, and then what's called cell respiration. Now, photosynthesis is the process where plants and algae and bacteria as well, and some protists, make carbohydrates. They actually, in photosynthesis, they make other things, but we're focusing on energy, and it's carbohydrates where we focus on that. So we're making food. And then later on, we'll learn how does the mitochondria use that food to extract energy out of it. This introductory lecture is really just on energy sort of in general. It's not specific to photosynthesis exactly, but next time will be all about the photosynthesis process from beginning to end. So just to, start off, energy comes in all kinds of different forms in nature, and you can look at the list right there. But living things, anything that we are capable of doing requires energy, and all the things that we do occur on the cellular level. So I've talked about that several times before. All the cellular processes, active transport, moving materials around, building things up, breaking materials down, making hormones, whatever else, all of that. Ultimately, it comes down to having usable energy. Now, we focus on nutrients, food for energy, and we can break down lipids for energy, but we really just focus on carbohydrates and how carbohydrates are made. Now, the sun, apart from small exceptions like around hydrothermal vents, the sun is the ultimate source for all of this energy. Photosynthesis is a process where sunlight energy is borrowed in order to transform water and carbon dioxide into glucose, into food. Now, plants are autotrophs. Sort of skip this, actually, in my lectures, but autotroph are organisms that make their own nutrients for energy. So anything that photosynthesizes is an autotroph. And there are chemosynthetic organisms too, which are autotrophic. Heterotrophs, such as ourselves, we have to consume food. I guess I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So plants are not like really solar powered, not directly. The sunlight energy, as I said, has to be used in order to transform some other chemicals into carbohydrates, and then we oxidize those carbohydrates, or plants oxidize those carbohydrates for energy. Well, we do that too, actually. It's just that we don't photosynthesize. So there are several different organisms that do this. Plants and algae, kelp. Bacteria photosynthesize, but bacteria do not have chloroplasts. They don't have any organelles other than ribosomes. So photosynthesis occurs on the plasma membrane of bacteria, whereas in eukaryotes it occurs along inner membranes inside the chloroplast. So again, as heterotrophs, we have to consume other organisms for usable energy, even decomposers, right? All energy really for almost all cases on our planet, life depends on the sun as its primary source of energy. That's where it all comes from. Okay, now, what do we mean exactly by that? Like energy, what does it look like? A car, burns a mixture of fuel and gasoline. What is it that a person does? We say we burn carbohydrates, and in a way it really is just a slow motion combustion reaction, because when you burn something, the products, when you burn wood, what does it turn into? Well, it reacts with oxygen and makes carbon dioxide and water, actually. That is what we exhale. We really do combust those carbohydrates. It's just at a very slow rate within our bodies. But anyways, the point is, in chemistry, energy is transferred, absorbed, or released in a chemical reaction. But a chemical reaction is where substances, compounds, break apart and form new substances or compounds. So it's the breaking and reforming of atomic bonds. So in the next video, we will see water and carbon dioxide are the materials required for photosynthesis, we're going to see how they're transformed. They go in as carbon dioxide and water, but they don't come out as carbon dioxide or water. And living things have, through the chloroplast and the mitochondria, have learned how to extract energy out of that. The universal energy molecule, we've covered this, is ATP. All life on the planet uses ATP. It's one of like 3 universal molecules for all life, along with DNA and RNA. ATP. And it is a nucleic acid, just like those other 2. And it gets its name because it actually has adenine in it, and then these 3 phosphate groups, triphosphate. So this molecule is what cells make in order to do the kind of cellular mechanical work, like active transport. The proteins can only be opened with ATP. We break down carbohydrates to make ATP. Now that's sort of down the road in a different video, but that's the gist of it right there. Here are 3 different models of ATP. Again, 3 phosphates. This one actually is a DP, so there are only 2 phosphates here. So what's that all about? Well, our bodies recycle ADP over and over again. Again, forming atomic bonds sometimes requires energy. Breaking atomic bonds oftentimes releases energy. So what happens is ADP is phosphorylized. We add a phosphate group to it. That sort of builds up some chemical potential energy, and then to extract the energy, the phosphate is broken off. Now, that sort of sounds like it would not be a net gain. That seems like it violates the laws of physics, such as like a perpetual motion machine or whatever. And I don't know the exact specifics of all of this, but there is a net gain of some energy here. But really what our bodies do is we use carbohydrates to make copious amounts of ATP. Moving on. So I sort of said this, breaking off that last phosphate bond is how the ATP molecule releases energy. So ATP is not part of your diet. You don't eat ATP. We eat carbohydrates, and that our cellular machinery generates huge amounts of ATP constantly by doing that. So in this analogy, we compare ADP to a partially charged battery, ATP to a fully charged battery. The way I try to explain it is like with a rubber band. So you take a rubber band and you pull it back, just a little ways. Not really that much energy goes into pulling it back, but then once you release it, it goes really far. So that's sort of like the energy you get out of ATP is greater than the energy you put into creating it in that way. And here's just another model to show the phosphorylation process of it. Just adding a phosphate onto it, and then breaking it off releases energy from the ATP molecule. So again, why do we need ATP? Well, it's specifically ATP is what activates all, I guess we could call them mechanical processes, because it has to involve movement to some degree, but any kind of muscle contraction or active transport, any of that all requires ATP. But we're also building new molecules all the time, replacing the lipid membranes in our cells, making new proteins, making new hormones, or breaking down old ones. All of that requires energy. Now ATP, it turns out, is, if it were excuse me, I have the hiccups. If it were a battery, it would be the worst battery ever. It cannot store energy. So this is why your body doesn't build up ATP. We're just always making new ATP. We do store energy, in the form of fats, and there's a way to make carbohydrates from fat, and then those carbohydrates are used to make ATP. That process is called gluconeogenesis, I believe. But why use carbohydrates? The ATP molecule is almost 3 times more massive than the glucose molecule. Its molar mass is almost 3 times greater. But glucose has sort of more potential energy, way more, 90 times more energy than a single ATP molecule. So what we will see, again, upcoming in future chapters, because this is where we end today, future videos I should say, is one molecule of glucose is used to make many, usually around 34 to 36 molecules of ATP. And those molecules go on to do all of the work that we need our cells to do. So, like I said, that does it for this video. Next time we will be going over really the whole process of photosynthesis. See you next time.